Hey everyone, Paul here with Proteus Debate Academy, and obviously also the director of debate at Diablo Valley College. We had one of our teams win the NPDA National Championship this year, and I thought that it would be cool if basically I open sourced a bunch of the files that were sort of like stock things that we were reading this year. And so there's a bunch of theory shells, there's like a silly K, and then some like PMC interview stuff. And so I kind of wanted to just walk through that with people, tell them what we were reading, all that sort of stuff. Something that is not in here is the K that Adrian and Jasper were reading at Nationals, because that is Jasper's K primarily, and not mine. And so it doesn't make sense for me to disclose that. Anyway, basically I'm going to be including the link to the Google Doc that you're seeing on your screen in the description of this video. And it sort of just talks you through like, hey, here's different positions that we were reading this year, so on and so forth. And ultimately my goal is just that. Obviously, I thought that these were solid arguments. I wrote them and all that kind of stuff, and we used them, and we found a lot of success with a number of them, and I didn't see any reason for other people to not have access to them. So let's do it. Getting into it, the first thing that you're going to see when you go into this file is our T framework shell. Now, on most of these, I've included either an overview before we get into the shell, or I've included like an explanation section after the shell. And so this overview at the top is just going to tell you like, hey, here's thoughts about this, T framework shell. Here's why we approach it the way we did. But just walking through the shell itself, the interpretation is that the affirmative must only derive offense based on the consequences of the implementation of a fiated topical plan text. Fairly standard interpretation for a long form framework shell, a T framework shell, and so that's ours. Our violations break down that the things that they don't defend are consequences or fiat or they aren't topical. And we make I think this is sort of the first special sauce thing, for lack of a better word, that we sort of try to explain that to be topical is to defend the resolutional actor and mechanism that is indicated in that resolution. We used to also say previously direction of mechanism, right? So increase versus decrease, but that tends to matter a little bit less. As far as the standards, the first standard is topicality, which just says that topicality is good, and we break down why it's good. And so actor being the first part of it. The parts that you see highlighted in yellow, and you'll see a few of these on this shell, are basically things that we were collapsing to a lot and people weren't like answering them, and so we were winning a lot of debates. So the first one you see here is that it's key to decision making. It requires consideration of institutional constraints, which is key to finding creative solutions. That accounts for the limits of material reality, and it helps identify vulnerabilities in institutions, which centers activism and is a necessary internal link for discursive spill up. This is basically just a preempt to them going for like their sort of like critical education arguments or like spillover solvency beyond just like what's happening in the round, trying to argue that you can't really do that if you're not accounting for the nature of reality and the nature of institutions. We then had a topical version of the ath solves argument. I explained this in the overview section that we looked at a second ago. I think TVA doesn't make a ton of sense pretty much ever. And the reason for that, as far as like, T versus K debates, is because to me it's sort of this like double bind question. And I'm borrowing this from Scott Phillips. So again, go read their blog, which is no longer active. But if there is a TVA, as in there is a critical version of the AF that is so similar as to be indistinct from just whatever TVA that you're throwing out. Basically, from saying like, if the AFK does indeed have a quote unquote topical version of the AF that exists and that is so similar, then obviously you have already prepared for it as part of that process of preparing for the TVA. Or, on the other hand, there is no TVA. There is not a version of the K that is topical. At which point, that sort of begs uniqueness for all of the educational claims or discursive claims that are being made by the affirmative team. Uh, an argument that we don't collapse to a lot, but I think is pretty important, is also this sort of topic adjacent is insufficient. There's a lot of teams who go for like, well, we read topic links, and obviously I think that is distinct from the sort of argument that we're making and how their interpretation and their sort of leveraging of, for lack of a better word, fiat allows them to get around a lot of the offense or defense that the negative would otherwise read. A standard of prep skew, this one is pretty useful, but it's not one of the like special tricks. I think most teams kind of have something here. We basically say like, it's hard in the middle of a round to just suddenly hear about a K and deal with it. I like this argument a lot about trade-off that basically says that if the goal is effective K education, their model of debate gives us worse education on both sort of topical substance and K substance, because we have to like split prep in that capacity. And then asymmetric advantage basically says that even if we did guess exactly what they're running, they get infinite prep time and second line, so they should still win the debate, right? Like, this is sort of a behavioral predictability analysis. This is something we started reading when we were reading the Wake Forest K at Nationals, which is like, sure, you could say that, well, we always read Protracted People's War or whatever it is, but there's nothing structurally stopping the affirmative team from audibling to whatever K they want in a model of debate that they are not inherently tethered to the topic. And so they're always going to have some sort of advantage where either they can just juke us whatever they want, or they can just have infinite prep time for the sort of second lines of that. Role of litigation is like probably the number one winner that we had this year. And basically, this was us just trying to say, like, switch side debate is good. And so the first one is iteration, which is basically an argument for why. I mean, I'll just read it. But iteration without predictable prep, the neg can't test the AF or make them refine their position. So we're starting off with this sort of truth testing claim that ties into things like fairness and education. This is terminal no solvency because it prevents the best version of the AF from emerging from the laboratory of debate. Saying it's externally validated amounts to trust me, bro, and is non-verifiable. So a lot of things going on there. One is that we're just trying to get a presumption trigger of some kind in there. And two, we're trying to hedge into K education arguments to say that, like, there's a best version of your K that will never emerge because we can't be prepared for it. The saying it's externally validated stuff is because one of the Whitman teams that won nationals last year, last year being 2025 Nats, they had a thing where they're like, you don't need to truth test us because it's been truth tested in other arenas. But argument is like, that's just trust me, bro. Like, that's non-verifiable. Like, it doesn't matter that you're asserting it is true. The effective negation solves the critical education is the number one thing that people did not answer. We just want free debates on. So our interp doesn't exclude any critical analysis from the debate. It just dictates where in the debate that occurs. Critiquing the topic on the neg solves all discursive and educational offense. This functions as a ballot pick where you could vote neg to negate. So we went for this quote-unquote ballot pick of just vote neg to negate against so many AFKs and won so many times because, like, everyone just dropped it or didn't deal with it or didn't know what vote neg to negate is. And the argument here basically is that topicality does not say that critical education or Ks do not belong in a debate. They say that it belongs on the negative side of the division of ground. And therefore, insofar as the affirmatives K is a rejection of the topic, you should vote neg because negating the topic is the neg's job, not the AF. Voter level, it's a lot of sort of you don't get to weigh the AF type stuff. So first thing is arguments about procedural fairness, not external. Your ballot can solve for fair in-round procedures, not external issues like resource disparities or oppression. Fair rules are the prereq for any psychological value from the ballot. The argument here being that, a lot of teams will say, well, fairness is non-unique because people have coaches or money or, whatever advantage. And our argument is that procedural fairness, like literal procedures that govern the debate round itself, are distinct from just discretionary forms of fairness. Those things are external features of a society and not necessarily a part of the debate as an activity. The education argument is MPA. This is obviously specific to Parley because that's what we're talking about. MPA's unique value is extemporaneous problem solving, forcing adaptation to the topic and critical thinking. The ASK failed to engage towards the case. Real world change demands engaging specific technical barriers. They're treated as a false positive that trains strategic incompetence, guaranteeing their advocacy fails when it confronts an unscripted problem. So this is sort of a terminal no solvency argument as well as sort of a miseducation type standard, right? Like, they produce bad scholarship insofar as they produce scholarship at all, because it's never tested, and then we get these false positives saying that it was successful because they won the ballot. But then if we were to try and use it outside of the space, it wouldn't, function. Next thing, stock issues come prior to the burden of rejoinder. The neg has no obligation to refute an affirmative until they meet their burden of proof. Two implications. A, you don't let them weigh the case against the theory because it begs the question of whether the case was legitimate to begin with. And B, concessions on the case can't be cross-applied to theory because we didn't have the burden of responding to them in the first place. The argument here basically is that, so the AF has the burden of proof, proving the resolution is true. The negative has the burden of rejoinder, which is responding to the affirmative, refuting that affirmative. But in a world where the AF doesn't meet their burden of defending a topical case, proving the resolution is true, then the negative ought have no obligation to respond to that affirmative in the first place. And so, obviously, we're saying they don't get cross-apps, but we're also trying to go for, they don't even get concessions, because concessions implies that the negative had an obligation to respond to it, and the fact that the negative did not respond to it means that it is now, sort of a golden floating argument for the affirmative, but we're saying, no, you're not even entitled to that. And then, of course, evaluate the competing interpretations. That's basically the long-form framework shell. We then, down here, just have a bunch of answers to arguments that I saw top teams like PDAB PZ or PDAB BC make over the years. And so I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are just a bunch of arguments that you'll have access to and that you can look at. So feel free to do so. Okay, the next shell is our Condo Bad shell, which is basically just Dispo. This is something that I put together for University of the Pacific at NPTE 2025, and we won some ballots there. And then I refined it a bit more in DVC Reddit this year in 2025, 2026. The only sort of secret sauce here is that we have changed the interpretation in such a way that hopefully doesn't reveal our hand, but what the strategy is, the trick is, this interpretation does not preclude the negative from reading multiple advocacies. It doesn't even preclude the negative from having advocacies which can be removed from the debate, because it says the negative may not read conditional advocacies, but it does not preclude the negative from reading dispositional advocacies. For those of you who don't know what disposition is, there's actually a link that covers this in this file, but dispositionality is if the affirmative reads a permutation or theory that is not about the status of the advocacy, then the negative can kick it. So functionally, it's aft choice versus neg choice as far as the ability of the negative to be able to kick stuff. And so, other than that, it's fairly standard. We explain, right, all these arguments about what they're doing and so on and so forth. Largely revolves around the idea of MG strategy skews. Sort of attempts to refute a lot of the arguments, like, oh yeah, but you get infinite permutations, or severance, disads, and counterplans are the same thing. We sort of try and tease out why advocacies are distinct from disadvantages, and even if they weren't, you'd still have to resolve defense, if or rather offense, if we put a turn on them by extending defense. It's just a condo shell. Now, this section here has been updated for 2025-2026 Nats. And so we basically have some sort of uniqueness claim that indicates that a lot of teams on the negative will go for the F has a structural side bias due to going first and last, and the fact that they get golden turns and things of that nature. That is what's called the primacy and recency effect, which is completely resolved for by just taking notes, insofar as that is a psychological phenomenon. And yeah, we're just saying that no, the uniqueness is that the neg bodies people at these tournaments. Now, an exception is that in PTE this year, it was Giga app sided. I would argue, and I think the board would probably agree, but I would argue that the topics just were Giga app sided this time around. They were so vague, and that caused a lot of problems. And so it was so bad that we're talking about how we can fix it next time. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And then we have our dispo solves other offense, right? Like, if the ability to kick out of advocacies, if the app reads perms or theories, that's not about the status of advocacies, allows multiple avenues of negation while allowing strategic MGs to generate sticky clash. You can read disads that are congruent with the thesis of the K, etc. So then down here, I have a write-up that I did for Pacific back in the day that explains how we deal with stuff, how a lot of this was written to, again, deal with PZ and BC, because, when you're dealing with the best teams in the country, that's what you're going to do. Just kind of walks through all this stuff. Also has A2 second line responses that people say to Kondo frequently that I think are dumb and things of that nature, so feel free to go ahead and look through that. So then we get to PMC interviews. PMC interviews have become very I guess, core to affirmative strategy in National Circuit Parley. I'm still not sure that I personally love them, but if that's what people are doing, and if that's what judges want to see, I think it's very important that you give judges what they want to see. So this is the one that I put together during NPDA, and a lot of this was informed by some stuff I was seeing in policy files on the current policy topic from, I think, Daniel Gallagher, if I'm not mistaken, who I think is just really cracked. And, the bottom line is we're doing all your standard framework stuff. I guess one difference is that I don't think a lot of the Parley ones I see try and sort of get into like fairness or education as impacts to sort of have like that up layer ability, and instead just go for like some silly warrant means that in every instance this isn't true or whatever. This is ours. It's not special or whatever, but in case you wanted to see what it is, there's that one. I think that the interp is fairly distinct from what people are doing in Parley, but that, or not, this part, rollabout, is distinct, but that's about it. There's another one down here if you want to look at that. We use this one for most of the year. The top one just became what we switched to sort of for elims of NPDA, but we weren't at that many times in a way that was relevant because obviously we're reading the KF a lot. Okay, and then lastly we have Ludology. Ludology is a silly dilly K that I put together because I wanted to for a long time. Ludology is the study of gaming, and gaming as a sort of like anthropological phenomenon and cultural phenomenon. And so this was a K that I put together at the beginning of the year to basically read alongside framework as like basically it's like a K that is framework, like T framework, but is through the lens of game design and sort of arguments about how like games and their role in our culture and play and its role in our culture are important. But the problem was we kept being in like all these elims, we kept getting AF. And so then I took the exact same K and I rewrote it to say the exact opposite thing. So like the interp, I'll just show you down. But like the interp on one of them is the role of the judge is to shatter the magic circle, and then on the other one, it's like the role of the judge is to maintain the integrity of the magic circle. And so a lot of sort of conflicting things there because these weren't and intended to be both AF and neg case in that sense. And so that's there and it exists and you can look at it if you want to. To give you kind of an overview, this starts from the perspective and from a book called Homo Ludens, which asserts that like Homo sapien may not be like man the wise is what Homo sapien translates to. May not be an accurate anthropological label, and that instead we should think of ourselves as like man that plays. And it talks about how play is sort of foundational, and what we're really doing here is operating at the level of like, hey, we are playing a game. We are all sitting around at the Dungeons and Dragons table, right? But there's some stuff that takes place above that game board that is relevant consideration and that influences how we play and how things manifest on the game board itself. And I originally wrote this because we were trying to deal with one of the Rice teams, I think it's JT, uh, to deal with their like semiotics K. And I thought there were some really sick arguments about how like play as a cultural and anthropological instinct predates language significantly, and that language is functionally a game that arises from these things. And yeah, I mean, feel free to look through it. This is not something, the AF or NEG version, that I am recommending anyone reads, but in the interest of ensuring people had access to like everything that we put together reasonably this year, just for this year, I wanted to put it out there so people could look at it. I guess the last thing that I'll say is I am not really of the opinion that files, right, in this sense, are the number one determinant of like how successful you will be. But I am of the opinion that the number one thing you can do to outperform your skill bracket, for lack of a better word, is to have really solid files, right? Like, I don't think having a really good K or having a really good T framework sheet or whatever is going to be the difference necessarily between you being a national champion or you not being a national champion. But I think that when you're talking about how do I beat a team that is better than me or that is in sort of a higher bracket than me, being effectively prepped is probably the number one thing that you can do. And so feel free to, use any of these word for word. Feel free to steal whatever you want from them. I'm a big fan of stealing from people who you think are better than you at debate or smarter than you at debate. And yeah, I hope that you folks enjoy that. There should be some more sort of post national stuff coming up. I think me and Steve are going to do like a podcasty nationals breakdown thing. But have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you folks again soon.